You're listening to Discography Discussion, episode 153, Children of Bodom. Hosted by Dan Terry,
General Metalcore reporting for duty,
Geoff Kane,
Riddle me that, motherfucker,
and Joseph Wren. Presented by discussmetal.com. And if you're ready for some borderline pirate metal, then you are ready for this episode of Discography Discussion. I am Joe, that is Dan, that is Geoff. Children of Bodom. Not what I was expecting.
It's not Children of Bodom?
Nope, it's Children of Top.
It is when you're from the deep, deep south.
Well, shit, man, I've been saying it wrong my whole life.
It's not the only thing.
Children of...
I used to say genre instead of genre.
Joe used to say degent instead of gent.
I still say it.
Yeah, he still says that.
I will never stop.
We will break you one of these days.
No, it won't happen.
I always wonder what would break first, your bottom or your degent. Guess it doesn't sound good unless I have an actual mask on. We need to get Bane on the show.
That would be great.
The actual Bane? Pretty sure he's a fictional character.
Oh, I was talking about the legendary hardcore band Bane.
That's where I was going. Besides, Marvel's better than DC.
We could save that for a different podcast.
And Image and Top Cow are better than both of them combined.
Children of Bodom is interesting because I feel like we have another Slayer situation on our hands.
We do one thing really well, very solid, for over 20 years.
Not only that, but they do a lot of different things that we're calling the same thing. Because it's easy to call them a melodic death metal band, but they're way more than that.
Yeah, the other thing, too, is, it's not like they do make enough changes to stay relevant. Their tunings change throughout, and the one thing that I like is they continued to go on is they dropped the keyboards in the mix. I mean, it's not like it was all the same.
It had cosmetic changes over time.
Right.
But for the most part, when you listen to the band, you get the epic, progressive, death metal, atmospheric keyboards with the barking vocals. But then the chorus has a melody because this is power metal at its core. It's really good power metal.
Yeah, especially their earlier stuff. You can definitely kind of get that gallop going on. You can hear it in the bass.
I'm all about that something wild and follow the Reaper.
Yeah, so they're more like a let's get rhinoplasty instead of a tummy tuck and a boob job. Whenever they did their changes, just enough to make it pleasing without going on a just total tangent of looking ridiculous.
Well, before we talk about Geoff's brand of all-natural enhancements, I want to take this time to say thank you to everyone for listening to the podcast. Thank you for listening and for subscribing. If you are not a subscriber, then you can find everything Discography Discussion at discussmetal.com. We are on Spotify, Apple and Google Podcasts, TuneIn Radio, Stitcher, so if you have an Amazon Echo or a Google Home, you have no excuse. Ask it to play the latest episode of the Discography Discussion podcast, and it will. We're also on Facebook and on Twitter at Discuss Metal. Be sure to like, favorite, and subscribe. It really helps us out. It lets us know you're listening, and now Dan is going to tell us all about 5-star reviews.
We love 5-star reviews here on Discography Discussion. We love them so much that whenever you leave us one, we'll read it on the show, which is what I'm going to do right now. Over on Apple Podcast, Benny Peabody says, love it. Very good podcast. I feel like I'm listening to multiples of me talking about a band. Maybe incorporate some discussion on a band's live performance if you've seen them.
I thought we did that.
We do that
pretty
sometimes,
well.
But I'm kind of a piece of shit and don't go and see half the bands I talk shit about on my show.
Well, the other problem, too, is we live in St. Louis. Nobody comes here to perform because they know they'll get their shit stolen.
Not anymore. They caught those guys.
Yeah, but that was like 2 months ago.
Weren't they posting on Craigslist and they're like, yeah, buy all of these amps. They're totally not stolen.
Yeah, I have no idea. But they were stealing shit for years. Like two fuckers ruining the entire scene for all of St. Louis. And I'm not just talking about metal. I'm just talking about small concert venues and people coming that are trying to make a living were getting fucked every time they came to St. Louis.
For how many years?
I don't know.
15, 20 years. They just had houses full of that shit.
Yeah, the one that set me over the top is whenever they stole all of Jeff Loomis's stuff. I was done. I was like, yeah, fuck these bitches.
You've crossed the line!
Dude, yeah, fucking Jeff Loomis is the god, man. I fucking love his shit.
We got a comment from TJ Weber over on Twitter. Discuss Metal is genuinely one of my favorite podcasts. Always getting me to go back and deep dive into music I forgot about or written off. Going down the showbread hole now.
That was quite a hole to go down. I remember, too, because we talked about Anorexia Nervosa, like, how many times?
Throughout the podcast?
Well, I think we spent, 40 minutes on it?
It only ended up being about 20, but it felt like we went on for an hour and a half.
Well, all I wrote in my notes was pretentious bullshit for those albums, and I ended up talking way more about it because as these discussions go on, you don't plan it, but then shit about it just keeps popping into your head while you're talking, and that one kind of grabbed me by the balls, and I just felt like I had to get into it.
So, Dan, you probably did talk for 40 minutes. It's just that Joe had to edit the fuck out of whatever it was you were saying.
Well, I mean, that's every week.
Think about how much time I save because I don't have to edit insert name of co-host anymore.
Oh, that'd be me.
But you're here now.
I know, so you're fucked this week.
Do you know
Sorry.
how many people are happy that you're here, Geoff? I just want to let you know. People are happy that you're here.
Everybody stop and clap that Jeff's here.
Yeah, everybody's happy except for Joe, because now he's got to... Yeah, let's just say yeah. He can just put in a bunch of beeps, because I could say a bunch of terrible things.
One thing I've noticed on the Facebook lately is the episodes are getting shared a lot, and I just want to appreciate every single one of you guys that has shared the episodes. Sharing the episodes does so much for our podcast, and we really appreciate it.
Thank you very much. 1997. Something wild.
As long as it's not something wicked.
This way comes?
It all comes this way.
I beat you to it.
I mean, I definitely a certain way whenever I listen to this album.
I don't know if I can leave that in the show.
This hit me like a sack of bricks, dude. Like, this was not what I was expecting at all. I have not been a huge Bodom fan for very long. You know, I mean, I think we all heard Hate Crew Deathroll back in the day when it came out, when this style of metal was kind of starting to come over here to the U.S. I kind of always thought that Children of Bodom was going to be a melodic death metal band, like, you know, kind of like In Flames or Dark Tranquility or Soilworker bands like that. And they definitely are melodic death metal, but it's like melodic death metal, power metal, thrash metal, traditional heavy metal, you know, earth metals.
Yeah, there's a bit of symphonic metal, just mainly because hearing the keyboards have such a prominent role.
It's the old school progressive metal keyboards where they're not just there, they're pronounced.
Yeah, it's very, very pronounced, and I think it's, the first three.
Well, and the guitar work has kind of this, neoclassical bend to it.
Yngwie Malmsteen is what I would call that.
Yeah, that's called arpeggios. If you're talking Yngwie.
Yeah, it really is a lot like that. And normally I hate shit like that, but it really works here. The way the keyboards kind of come in too, the guitars are so gnarly and out there that sometimes I can't tell if I'm hearing a keyboard solo or a guitar solo.
Yeah, because of the tone.
Yeah, they almost match. And this record fucking brought it, dude. It's not even okay, well, it is cheesy. I can't say that it isn't cheesy. But I don't know. It kind of comes across as really cool.
It's because it's in your face. I mean, it's not at the laid-back, typical power metal where you're just kind of galloping along and having fun. Now, they're here to kick ass and take names while playing it, which is really enjoyable because that's not always the case with that style of music before these guys came around. So it's an enjoyable listen because it's kind of like hitting power metal at 1.5 speed or something.
Yeah, kind of. It's not breakneck speed all the time.
Right.
But it can be that. It's hard to say. I just like that it's death metal in its base without being a Gothenburg type of band. You know what I'm saying?
I like how many people would compare this directly to Iron Maiden, even though Iron Maiden doesn't have this type of symphonic presentation. They're considered by many to be the standard of power metal, but they're basically just a melodic thrash band. This is more of I want to say, everything that was popular in Japan when it comes to hard rock and heavy metal throughout the decades. Almost everything is appreciated over there through time. There's an entire group of people that listen to every style, dress every way, behave every way. And one of the things that guitar players over here really started to pay attention to was all these anime theme songs that sounded like a symphony thrown together with a thrash metal band. There's one guitarist and he does all the crazy diddly stuff. But this sounds like a solid metal band that just has a keyboardist. And it really does work. It's not your run-of-the-mill thrash metal, progressive metal. We really wish we were Dream Theater kind of band.
Well, I think they just kind of took elements that they liked and what they thought would work well with them, and they kind of just put it in a melting pot and put it all together, and it sounds great because they're definitely pulling from multiple elements and putting it together, making it their own. And that's kind of what you want from the band, is to find their groove and go with it and continue to get better and make good music as they're going throughout the career. And they've done that. And that this was an excellent start out of the gate, because I think they had only been together for 2 years before they made this full release. That's pretty fucking quick whenever you think in band terms, to go from nobodies to making a full-length release.
It's also ridiculous to think about what this came out against. Slayer was about to put out a groove metal record. You had all the Pantera fans. Metallica had just done Load and Reload, was about to put out Garage Inc. Nu metal was taking over. And here comes a symphonic death metal record out of nowhere. Most people either didn't pay attention to it or didn't know it existed. But I'm so glad it exists. It's fucking great.
You know what? I just had a thought. When I hear Children of Bodom, if it was to form a mental image for me from the music, they sound what Ghost looks like for me.
I'm going to let you have that one, Geoff. Because I don't disagree.
So, it's funny because whenever you go and you see Ghost, I mean, like, if all of a sudden they started playing Children of Bodom shit, I think everybody would have gone fucking wild.
As opposed to fucking Blue Oyster Cult?
Yeah. So that's just kind of the vibe I get from this, because, it's just kind of dark, but kind of haughty and exalted all at the same time.
Like the Hall of the Mountain King video from 1987.
Yeah, I mean, kind of. That's exactly it. I mean, but that Hall of Mountain King kind of gives you that vibe too.
Fantasy, mystery.
Yeah, mystery, dark, but fun and badass all at the same time. Jim
Henson puppets.
Well, what I like about Children of Bodom, they have a very technical nature to their music. Like, it's very well constructed. However, they go more for the, we're just here to have a good time angle than I think a lot of bands like this do, where one guy in the band thinks he's really progressive and they end up making like 30-minute songs that go nowhere.
They're not so pretentious and up their own ass.
Yeah, they're not.
In your famous words.
Correct. And so that's what I really like about it, is that I get a record that just has, 7 or 8 songs on it, and that's all it is. It's not trying to be some bigger, greater thing. And spoilers, it's going to be that way for a while.
1999, Hatebreeder.
So it's like Hatebreed, but like more?
It's more like the guy who is in charge of the hate breeding.
Okay.
Hi, Geoff.
Yo.
So this is more of that. Everything we said on the last record. If anything, this sounds a little bit thinner, which is surprising to me. We're getting close to the 2000s. We haven't taken over with the digital revolution of making everything sound thin and boring. So this keeps the 1980s classic hair metal, thrash metal sound of thin, punchy guitars with double bass and the symphonic punch. Everything that we had in the last record, we have that again here. These are just new songs.
Well, if you think it's thinner, I think it's because trying to get the more of an ethereal feel to the vocals, kind of like at least that's what I got out of this one. I really liked the vocals on this quite a bit.
It's a record that reminds me of listening to cassette tapes. And for me, that's awesome. That's nostalgic. That's my old Slayer tapes, my Metallica tapes. I love all that stuff. So for me, this is not bad. If this was a vinyl record, I'm certain Dan Terry would want to own it.
Yeah, kind of like the metal tapes. Whenever you'd have the metal switch on your tape deck.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, that's because you get that really bright feeling to it. That's kind of what you get out of this. It's thinner and brighter, and it's not as warm and deep.
With the automatic reverse that plays the second side.
Yeah.
Love it.
Sounds more symphonic to my ears. Like there's a little bit more keyboard, a little bit more of that like weird medieval thing that these types of bands like to do.
Why is medieval always associated with symphonic and fantasy?
I don't know. It's kind of weird because whenever I say medieval, a lot of the times it's not a good descriptor. Like I'll say that like early In Flames or Dark Tranquility sounds kind of medieval, but it's not. That's more just like folk melodies. Whereas this band doesn't really rely on the folk melodies, and that's actually what I like about them. It's refreshing to hear a Finnish death metal band not rely on like the Scandinavian thing,
The roots of our music is not in America. Therefore, we will play our roots in our music, and it will sound like Scandinavian ice and wind and strange gods with strange beards and braids and whatever.
Yeah, because the interesting thing is a lot of that stuff, it's Baroque. I mean, is what it really is. I mean, you're talking about classical composers is what they're getting their inspiration from.
And I'm mocking in jest because that's what you think of when you think of that mentality and that presentation.
I was just trying to explain more of what I think where Dan was coming from whenever he says, that it's medieval.
Absolutely.
That was what the style of music was back then. It was, it was Baroque and grandiose. I mean, that was the whole premise behind it. It was because you were going to a show to be entertained because they didn't have recordings back then. But yeah, Children of Bodom, I think, is going to be one of the reviews that we're going to end up doing where it's kind of hard to say like a lot of bad stuff about them. The only thing that you can ever say bad about them sometimes is that you end up with sometimes a little too much of the more of the same issue, but they do it so fucking well, you can't really complain about it.
Well, the vocals kind of get a little repetitive after a while.
Yeah.
But I think one of the cool things about this band is they don't really resort to cleans. Because, like, if you can't clean sing, don't just sing shitty In Flames.
Oh, well, there's some really ridiculous clean singing on the first two albums that go away, since we're talking about clean singing on this.
I wouldn't even
the classic thrash vocals.
I wouldn't even call that clean though. Like it's just a different. It's kind of a little bit of like a death and roll situation. If you've listened to many, like some of the later Entombed albums, you would call them death and roll, where they're just trying to sound rock and roll,
silently vanishing and reappearing.
But it's kind of this weird like European version of what they think American biker culture is like, and so you get like.
They've been watching too many movies about Hell's Angels.
Yeah.
He's a rebel without a cause.
Where the highway is my friend. It's fine.
Mad Max was a documentary.
I think that I think they still sound kind of cool though in the context of the songs, and it's unexpected, and it's entertaining, and it's not done all the time.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's probably my only complaint on the first two albums, other than the fact that I'm not a huge fan of the. Keyboards being so prominent in the mix, and I think that's actually really the first three albums that it's like that. Probably the first four, but yeah, that's really my only complaints. I mean, you're doing okay.
Holy shit, Geoff's a meathead on this one. I need more guitars.
Yeah, I mean, hey, they don't have a lead violin, so yes.
Are we ready to follow the Reaper?
I think we are.
Andy Adkins says he was the Reaper, so I will follow you, Andy. 2000, follow the Reaper.
Did you guys like the last two albums?
You're going to say that thing where we say, did you like it? Well, you get more of it now, except it might sound different on this one.
It doesn't sound different.
No, this is definitely more of the same. The one thing that I did like on this one was the movie quotes. Kind of I like The Exorcist 2 and 3 when nobody else does. Everybody just likes the first one. So they quote The Exorcist 3 on this one, I think it is.
That's a good fucking movie.
Oh, it's terrible, and it's good because of it. Same thing with 2.
No, 2's just terrible.
No, I fucking love those locusts, man. But yeah, this is, as Dan said, more of the same. And that's not a bad thing in this instance. We're to the point now that they're establishing themselves, and they have a pronounced style that they're sticking to, and it's working for them. They're starting to get noticed outside of Europe, which is good. And this is the one that really starts revving it up, and it's to the next album that you really start, gaining traction over here in the States.
This one I felt like was a little bit more power metal, though, than the previous two, which was kind of a blend of death metal or melodic death metal and power metal. I feel like this one's even more bright, more happy sounding, more upbeat. As happy as a guy growling that sounds like a goat with his throat cut sounds. The music is very bright. It's in your face. It's more so even than Hatebreeder. And I think that if they had a clean vocalist, this would be almost indistinguishable from a power metal release.
It would sound like a 1980s epic singing Robert Plant-sized vocals with this type of music. It would be the anime soundtrack.
Yeah, the big plus for me on this one is that this has got a song that Blue October covered, Hate Me.
I'm really glad you pointed that out, Geoff, because not a lot of people know that's a cover. So many people think that it's an actual original song. Oh, wait, you're fucking with me, right?
Yes, I am. Oh, God, I was like, please, Joe, don't fall for it.
Come on, Geoff. It's good improv. Yes, and not what the fuck are you talking about? I've been practicing. It's a good fucking song.
Yeah, it is. It was like the single that finally really got him noticed over here.
I mean, it's got some great band names on here. We got Every Time I Die, Bodom After Midnight, Northern Comfort. I'm not even joking. Go look it up.
It's like a shitty version. Maybe it's like a colder version of Southern Comfort, like frozen Southern Comfort. I don't know.
It's just vodka.
But I thought this one was like the most fun, and I'm going to stick with that it's their most fun record. I just don't really, like I'm not sick of it at this point. I'm not going to fault a band for continuously delivering what the fans want. Metal fans, as we've discussed, are very, very hard to please. And I think in this case, you're pleasing that hardcore fan that's like, you guys are great, you're awesome, don't ever change. And I think every band gets a free pass for their first 3 albums or so, being in the same vein at least, because you're still trying to perfect a sound. You're not trying to innovate yet at this point.
Yeah, and then bringing up the point too, they were only together 2 years before the first full release came out, which is pretty unusual.
That's more than In Flames.
Yeah.
Didn't they write Lunar Strain like overnight?
Yeah, but that's
one of them did.
That's further in the other direction than most. Most of the time, people are scrounging and tooth and nail in it, trying to get going for more than just 2 years before you actually release a full release for the entire world to hear. That doesn't happen very often.
Plus, it's got the guitar solos.
Yeah.
3 records of that. Do you know how hard it is for me to find a good guitar solo on this show? I'm so happy we did this discography.
It's because, I want to listen to metalcore all the time. They don't really have good guitar solos.
Yeah, and I want to listen to grindcore. So, Bent C.
Well, we'll have to have Geoff back on the anal episode.
Yeah. Well, that's guys from Soil Working Aborted. So that's good shit right there.
2003. Hate Crew Deathroll.
All right, this is my introduction.
Now we're fucking talking. Mine too.
Yeah, this is the first time I heard these guys. And holy fucking shit, they blew my mind whenever I heard it.
I like the record, but listening to it this week, I thought it was extremely lacking in the production department. Terrible. That's not a reason not to listen to it. It's a good fucking record. But that's one of the issues with doing this show is you get the entire chronological release, not the newest record by the band, or in your case, in Dan's case, the first record by the band. So it's badass. It's just not as good as the other ones, I don't think. Still intense.
No, this one scratched that itch for me. It was the first time that I heard some jams that I really enjoyed. It's probably my favorite album. Just because it's probably my introduction. It's one of those things, you get that emotional attachment, and I just thoroughly enjoyed what I was hearing. It was different for me, and because I normally am not a big keyboard guy. I was in the, shoot Jordan Reedus and Dream Theater being infinitely better band. That's kind of how my mentality was. So I just didn't like keyboard players that were prominent. And then this came along and I was like, okay, fucking dig this stuff. This is good.
Well, this is a lot less on the keyboards. The keyboards aren't being shoved up your ass. The neoclassical sound is somewhat downplayed. The riffs are heavier. They go for, there's some groove riffs where they just, slow it down a little bit more. And there's a lot more focus on actual, melodic hooks in the songs. And put it all together in a blender, and this isn't just a power metal band with screaming vocals anymore. Now they're going for an actual heavy. You can really hear that on Sixpounder. That's one of my favorites. And Triple Corpse Hammerblow. Those songs are some of the heaviest songs they'd written to date, and used the keyboard as kind of just a establisher of atmosphere more so than we're gonna play a fucking keyboard solo now.
Agreed. Yeah, because it kind of gave you that ethereal feel to set the tone of what was to come.
What's funny, and when I'm talking about unpleasable metal fans,
ladies and gentlemen, unpleasable metal fan,
people criticized this album for being too mainstream sounding.
This is 2003. You did it all for the nookie, or you didn't do it. What the fuck, guys?
Well, by 2003, nobody listened to Limp Bizkit.
I'm trying to hold on to it, goddammit.
Although they do have a little bit of a Limp Bizkit thing going on in that they are obsessed with their band's name. Every album has a song with the word Bodom in it.
Well, not every, but to this point, yes, every album so far.
They just can't get over it. They're like, fuck yeah, look at Bodom. It's cool
Bodom
word.
Beach Tear is actually one of my favorite songs on this album, so I don't have a problem with it at all.
I would actually, this is going to be a controversial statement, but I actually put this right up there with Slaughter of the Soul by At the Gates.
Really?
As far as being a band that was more or less obscure, in the United States at least, that hits with an album that has basically universal appeal.
Yeah, this one even found its way onto Headbangers Ball with a couple of tracks, which, I mean, that was like, you fucking made it if you were a metal band, if you found your way onto Headbangers Ball back in the day.
Well, I mean, at this point, like, dude, fucking normies were coming up to me being like, hey, have you heard Hate Crew Deathroll by Children of Bodom?
Really, dude? You just said normies?
Well, yeah. I mean that, though. Like, metal at that time in the U.S. was starting to get so big that people were hearing shit like Demi Borgir, and they were hearing shit like Children of Bodom and Cradle of Filth, and, like, it was all getting very, an Arch Enemy. Like, it was all kind of part of this.
And you know what you have to thank for that? Jackass.
Yeah.
Bam Margera, I mean, you can shit on the guy all you want, but at one point he was, highly influential in the MTV culture.
I admit, he's the reason I know Turbo Negro.
So, yeah, I mean, he brought a lot of that good music over because he had a lot of those guys on, the various shows that he did on MTV. And, people pay attention to that, and people were huge fans of Bam and Jackass and, Viva La Bam and all that stuff. So, I mean, it makes sense on people are starting to catch on because that's what was making it happen.
Geoff, I think you just solved the puzzle. The MTV fans were watching shows about jackasses, listening to Finnish death metal they've never heard before.
Yeah.
I think you get a cookie for that one.
Woohoo!
Well, this was a great album, and of course the old school fans are only going to like the more obscure previous albums because, well, they're more obscure, and look at what I heard that you didn't hear. You guys are all a bunch of fucking losers. You're a bunch of posers. I can't believe this band that I like and wanted to do well is now doing well, so fuck them. I don't want them to do well anymore. Blah, 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 blah.
Where have I heard that before?
This is a great record, and it really, in a lot of ways, was their best record up to that point.
I still think I think it's in their top two.
To me, it's the pinnacle.
This one and the next are the pinnacle. I mean, it's
really.
I think it's a tie.
You ready for Are You Dead Yet?
Yeah.
2005. The answer is no. Not yet. Working on it every day. It's called Living.
Well, this record was certainly heavier than the previous ones. They definitely dropped those guitars. And
the keyboards collectively are much lower in the mix, too.
And the power metal's almost gone here. They're going for more of a straight-on, like, melodic death metal sound. At this point, they're trying to appeal to the fans of In Flames or Dark Tranquillity or At the Gates or Arch Enemy. And I think they're doing pretty well, although I think this is probably their most basic-sounding release.
It's tame.
But it's not necessarily a bad thing because, on some of the old Bodom albums, there's just so much shit going on at once that it's kind of hard to keep track of all of it. I shouldn't have to listen to a record 5 times before I get it. And this record is a little bit more like we're going to feed it to you a little bit slower, but we're going to be heavier and we're going to be a little bit closer to it. Like, it's a little bit more Americanized.
Yeah, it is, and I'm fine with that. I don't necessarily have an issue with stuff that's overly produced. It's a different sound for them. Personally, so I like the fact that they're doing something a little different, even if it's what everybody else is doing. I really don't give a shit, especially in today, considering how old is this album? 15 years old or whatever it is?
Yeah, it's old as fuck.
It doesn't matter today. Sure, it maybe mattered to some people that were pretentious assholes in 2005, but that would be Dan. But I fucking love this album, man. It's catchy. It's got some hooks. It's got some groove going on in it, and I like that shit. I'm an unabashed groove fan. So anything you can do to bring a little bit of the feel like I can move to it, even though it's metal, I'm perfectly happy with it. And there's a lot of that on this album.
I'm a fan of the groove. I like riffs. Some of the earlier material was more of the look what I can do with my guitar versus here's the cool riff for the song. This album has the most groove to date. It's got solid riffs. I'm sure a death metal purist will complain about it. I can't do that for the same reasons because I like the record. If the previous albums were too complicated for you to pay attention to and enjoy, this one is leaning more towards we're playing songs that you might like. We're not trying to become popular. We're not trying to put out the Black Album and become Metallica, but we are trying to appeal to more people. And honestly, we've blown through so many ideas that some of the slower, more groove-type riffs that we wouldn't use before, they're starting to sound like good song ideas.
You see, I do think they were going with let's get as popular as we can get with this album.
Eventually, you got to get paid,
but
or you got to stop doing it.
But they did it right. You know, there's no stupid bullshit on this record. There's no like, who, me, now, used to be afraid to let it go, bow down. There's no evil in a fucking closet. There's nothing...
Fuck you, man.
There's
I love that
nothing
album.
stupid. But they didn't go stupid. They didn't just like... Yeah, they simplified their songwriting a little bit. They dubbed it down for us a little bit. But they didn't just like immediately be like, you know what I think we need? Clean choruses. And
you know what they need is some Britney Spears.
What they really needed.
How are you going to get out of this one, Geoff?
Dude, they covered Oops, I Did It Again.
They absolutely did.
It was brilliant.
That's where I was going with it.
I was just going to let you die on that hill, but you found a way to crawl out.
I prefer their cover of Ghost Riders in the Sky. But that's just me.
All of it's better than their cover of Danger Zone. I hate that song. I think that's so bad.
They're definitely a band that can't just cover any song they want to, but don't tell them that.
They do a lot of like all their bonus, like a ton of their bonus stuff is covers. So if you're a collector, I mean that's the reason why you're collecting is you want to get all their covers because they actually do a crap ton of them.
Well, I want to give a disclaimer on the next album. The next album is not the name of a Cannibal Corpse album, but it should be.
2008, Blooddrunk.
Give it time, Dan. It could still happen.
It could still happen. I mean,
it's not like they're not making music.
That's true. Blooddrunk, I don't know. It's just like gore obsessed. Blooddrunk, I don't know. It just rolls off the tongue. But a lot better than Evisceration Plague. This one, am I wrong? But do they sound a little Gothenburg here, guys?
There's no little.
Like, I'm like, fuck, am I listening to like a B-side, a Dark Tranquility B-side here?
I don't know if Dark Tranquility has this much keyboard.
They do.
But if they did, okay, they do.
Yep, they do.
This is the only album that I'm kind of like, I could pass on this one. I don't think that this is like their most amazing work. And it's a little bit more dumbed down, I feel, than they had ever been before. Where they're like, we're just going to release a kind of a generic melodic death metal album in the Gothenburg style, even though we're not from Gothenburg. And we had a super original sound before this. So we're going to do this because this is what everyone else is doing.
You're doing this because this is what sells. And they sold, 20,000 copies in the first week, which is fucking insane for a metal band.
They sold a couple of them, yeah.
I mean, it's pretty impressive. I mean, because you're in the digital era, where album sales just don't exist anymore. So, yeah, I mean, I don't mind it. I mean, I think it's quite enjoyable. But then again, I like the Gothenburg sound. I could listen to the Gothenburg sound all day and night and never complain. So I'm perfectly happy with what they're giving me.
I only like it with bands that are like innovators in that genre. Everything else, it's kind of hard for me to really digest because I'm like, I could listen to another band do this maybe a little bit better. But in saying that, it's not like Bodom's bad. It's not that they can't deliver that style. But I don't know. It just doesn't hit me quite like the old Bodom releases do.
See, I view it as their spin on the Gothenburg sound. I don't think it's like a straight up. There's still plenty of elements of Children of Bodom here to know it's exactly who you're listening to. Between the vocals and the keyboards especially. I mean, his voice is very easy to tell who you're listening to. So I don't mind it at all. And I like the fact that they're, it's not the same album as it was for the first three. They've had 3 albums that were pretty much the same. And then these last 2 are pretty much the same.
Well,
I'm fine with that.
It's not nearly as unoriginal as their next album, Skeletons in the Closet, that came out in 2009. It's a covers album. That's really all I'm going to say about it. If you want to hear Children of Bodom absolutely butcher some songs, this is the record to do it to. Depending on how you feel, like I feel like some of the covers hit. Like their cover of Aces High is great, but I don't know. If you've been collecting all of the Japanese releases of these albums, you pretty much have all these covers anyway.
Yep.
2011, Relentless, Reckless Forever.
Well.
My first thought is the guy, whoever the artist was for this, was the same guy who does all the art for all the Iced Earth albums. That was the first thing that came into my head when I saw this.
I don't want to think about Iced Earth.
Iced Earth is good, like one album, every few months instead of the 15 we did in 2 weeks.
It was a fun 2 weeks.
Yep, this is also the first album that doesn't have a song with Bodom in the title.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of notable.
That's about it.
Yeah, I didn't really think that this record was okay. If it's the first Children of Bodom album you heard, you're still going to get into the band. You're going to listen to their records because it's just that they have been delivering to us at this point on such a high level. Like we're expecting everything to one up the next thing. Like there's this human expectation we have to where how are they going to blow our minds even more? Because even the craziest albums that you listen to, once you've listened to them 1,000 times, they don't sound crazy anymore. And this record is kind of in the same vein as really some of the older stuff. But you're sitting there like, well, I've heard it all already. We're finally enough albums in to where it's like, okay, guys, what else you got in your grab bag?
Well,
I don't know
tell you
what
what,
they need.
the one thing that I didn't have the bonus edition on this album. Yeah, I think I'm going to go listen to that as soon as we get off here because they fucking cover Eddie Murphy's Party all the time. Holy shit.
What the actual fuck, Geoff?
I swear to dude, I'm fucking listening to that because I love My Girl Wants to Party All the Time. Yeah, I can't fucking wait, man. That's probably going to sound like just as bad as I did.
But what does that say about the fucking album, though? that the exciting part of it is the Eddie fucking Murphy cover? Like, are you serious?
So the joke is the band does a cover that you like to make up for the seemingly identical material that makes up the bulk of the record.
It's not bad, it's just lackluster. And I know they're better than this.
No?
Like, do I need to hear another keyboard solo?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to have to say on this particular case, you're going to have to hear it because this band has keyboards, they have lead guitars, they take turns, they play in sync. It's awesome.
I mean, I'll give it a little bit of credit in the sense that, like, they are going back to what they kind of got big doing. They're not really trying to experiment much. And, as a Slayer fan, I love that. But as a music reviewer, I have to say, like, yeah, they're starting to sound pretty samey at this point. I think maybe it went over a little bit better for the overall audience who maybe felt like their sound was starting to get a little bit more dumbed down, and this is not that. This is kind of a return to form if I'm listening to it 2 years after the previous release.
2013, Halo of Blood. Guys, it's 2013, and Children of Bodom put out a new record.
I'm going to throw this one over to Geoff to start off, and if you say anything about the fucking cover songs, I don't care if there's a Roxette cover.
Nope, I wasn't going to go there.
Okay.
No. It's a Children of Bodom album. I mean, we're to the point now where it's starting to get a little played out. Easy to listen to any of their albums whenever you're not cramming to review their material, because I like them all. It's just that whenever you try to cram all of their music all together, it was the same thing that since I mentioned Iced Earth earlier, I'm starting to have the same issue that I have with Iced Earth, which is a band that I love, and that is that it's too much of the same again. And I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, okay, this is really good music, but it also sounds very similar to what I've been listening to. And normally that's not a bad thing, because as a fan and you're consuming this, 3 years after the last album, that's exactly what you want. But when I started listening to this 3 minutes after I finished the previous album, it becomes an issue as a reviewer and kind of disappointing.
Right, because I'm listening to it, while I'm playing Champions of Noreth on the PS2, and by the time I get to this record, it's 2 a.m. and I'm starting to nod off. Whereas if it was a little bit more interesting of a band, I may have been more into it. Because when we were listening to Cannibal Corpse, I was doing the same thing. And their stuff sounds very samey as well, but their music was a little bit more interesting overall. Whereas with Children of Bodom, they do a lot of cool shit. They do a lot of cool tricks. The solos are cool. The musical composition is actually better than it has been, and that the band is better at writing songs than just a collection of parts, which is what their early material was. So, I mean, there are improvements there, but as far as the overall sound goes, it all just blends together. Like, it might as well just be a whole bunch of different parts thrown together into a song.
I think if you're a guitar guy or a fan of symphonic death metal in general, everything here is good. You're going to listen to the songs that you like. You might learn how to play them and go start a band that does this style of music. Listening to it back to back, there's a reason why you don't just listen to Children of Bodom every single day. The biggest fault is that it is so similar. But if you're a fan of the band and you went home on a Thursday and picked out a record, put it in, and listened to it, you're going to be happy. There's nothing wrong with it. There's just nothing really to say that's different from the other records. It's another album. Does everybody want to worship chaos?
I do.
I guess, if I don't have anything else to do.
2015. I worship chaos.
Sure, I'll join your cult.
I enjoyed it.
I actually did too, and I enjoyed it because it was kind of a little bit more of a stripped down sound, and there's a reason for that.
Yeah, they're kind of missing somebody.
Yeah, so their guitarist, can you even pronounce his name?
Me?
Is it like Roop or?
Rupe Latvala.
There you go. That's why we pay the big bucks. He left the band in 2015, and so Alexei Laiho, sure,
Yeah, you got
Not
it right.
bad.
he did the he did the lead and rhythm guitar, and they didn't record this one in a studio. They recorded it in a warehouse, and it does sound suitably more punchy. Like, first of all, it's in drop B for most of the album, and you can definitely hear that there's a hell of a lot more chunk on the guitar.
Yeah, it's way dirtier, and I like it. And it's enough of a difference to catch your ear.
Yeah, this is kind of the breath of fresh air that I've been talking about wanting.
Yeah, I actually really, really enjoyed this album. And it's kind of like what you said, because I watched, if people haven't figured it out, I'm a huge hockey fan. And so I was watching hockey and listening to most of their albums through the last week and a half or so. And when this one popped on, I started paying attention. I was like, oh, wait, okay, all right. This is some good stuff. And can't complain. It's got to be good to take my attention away from hockey, because, like, you could be talking to me and I can respond and I have no fucking clue what you just said and what I just said.
Right, like most of the podcast.
Right.
Fucking look
you.
behind me, Geoff, watching fucking hockey on his phone.
Yeah, it's MMA night. I'm watching Conor McGregor and Donald Cerrone tonight. No, I'm not. That's not until later tonight.
You deserve to be fucking hexed, my friend.
I enjoyed myself thoroughly, and that was it was like you said, it was a breath of fresh air, because I was not expecting that at this point in time. I was fully planned to get more of the same, and it didn't happen, and I'm very, very happy that didn't happen.
I definitely enjoyed it. It was a little Gothenburg in places, but I'm going to go ahead and just let it go. It was fine. This is a far cry from their very early material, which I think I prefer a little bit more, but overall this was a really solid release, and I recommend it.
I think if you're a guitar player, you know that changing your tuning counts as doing something different. So the fact that this one does not cosmetically sound the same, but still has many of the same ideas and the same feel, it's different enough to be interesting. It's a good record, but so far, they all are.
Yeah, the other thing too, we've shed on them a little bit about the whole Gothenburg thing, but let's keep in mind, by this point in time, most of those Gothenburg bands didn't sound like Gothenburg melodic death metal anymore.
No, they were putting out shit like Siren Charms.
Yes.
Oh, fuck.
So really, it's more like I feel like they're kind of like a torchbearer in the fact that it's been handed off, These guys are definitely more metal than most of the Gothenburg guys are at this point in time, so I'm happy to take it and run with it, and found myself enjoying myself way more than I thought I would on this. This was some good jams on this one.
Definitely one of their heaviest in a long time.
2019, Hexed.
Well, it's kind of the end of an era, isn't it?
Quite literally.
Did anybody else notice in 2019 that Children of Bodom put out a record that sounds like classic Mortification? I'm going to let it go there, but
I don't hear that.
It was shocking to me the way this one sounded like an album produced 15 years prior. It's all good. It's still that I Worship Chaos, lower-tuned, symphonic death metal sound that Children of Bodom is doing now. I definitely put it on the shelf with the Coffin Train and Firepower. Really good examples of modern heavy metal.
I thought it was a really good album, but I think it's really kind of hard to listen to it without thinking about the controversy that surrounds it, that this is the last album by this band as we know them.
Yeah, why don't you tell us who left, Dan?
Well. Okay.
Let's hear it.
Here we go.
Or do you want me to do it?
All right, we got Henry Henka T. Blacksmith.
Sapala. All right.
Jaska W. Rattikainen.
Rattikainen,
that sounds more Finnish.
Okay.
And keyboardist Yanni Werman.
Verman, yes.
Verman. V. Okay, it's a
Jeff's
W's
giving you
V.
a lesson here.
All right.
I'm learning how to speak on the podcast in real time. It's perfect.
Anything I can do to just give you a little shit, I got to do it.
Well, they left the band. They had one final gig as that band. And, well, it turns out that, well, their lead singer doesn't own the band name, which as a lead singer, I will tell you, is a rookie fucking move. You got to own your shit, man. How else are you going to hire a bunch of hired guns and go back on tour?
You start a new band and call it Ghost.
You can't do it. And so basically, unless these dudes give him permission to use the band name Children of Bodom, he's pretty much fucked.
Well, they'll probably give him permission.
But you got to pay the money.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, sure. If you want to pay us
my,
for the album sales, and yeah,
I need my slice of the pie because you are benefiting off of a name that I've helped build for 2 decades. It makes sense. I wouldn't be surprised if the next thing that we hear is, a band with a completely different name, and they're going to say that it. I wonder if he can get away with, Children of Bodom featuring Alexei Liho. I wonder if he could do it that way.
he might be able to just throw his name at the beginning of it.
Yeah, or Alexei's Children of Bodom, because that's stuff like that has happened before as a workaround.
Alexei's Children.
Yes.
He might be able to get away with it, but I mean, it's not going to sound anything like their previous material, which in my opinion, as we've been saying, is probably a good thing. Like, I'd actually be down to hear what he comes up with.
Well, I don't know, because most of the people that have left over the last 10 years of the band that were consistent members, not just the ones that just left, because I know they had their lead guitarist leave, I think in 2015, before this, was frustration with the direction of the sound and creative differences. And if you're playing more of the same, I mean, I kind of get it. You're going to want to, if you're wanting to show your chops and prove that you're more than just a one-trick pony, you're going to want to, spread those wings a little bit. And it's kind of hard to do that whenever you're still trying to make a buck at the same time for some people.
You think they're going to keep the theme surrounding Bodom? We haven't really talked about where the name came from.
Yeah, why don't you go on to that one?
What I know about it is Bodom is a lake in Finland where in the 1960s, a group of children were murdered by an unknown assailant.
Alexei.
While they were in a fucking tent. Some versions of the story say that he basically collapsed the tent around them to prevent them from escaping. That may or may not be true, but I don't know enough about it to say that it's not. So it's a very dark place in their history.
Yeah, there was 3 people died, 1 person survived, And like 45 years after these murders, the one guy that survived it was prosecuted for the crimes of murdering the other 3.
Did he do it with a 6-pounder? Or a triple corpse hammerblow?
Well, there was a little bit of that, but knife and blunt instrument.
Did he have some friends there?
Well, no.
Did he form a hate crew Deathroll?
Well, he ended up becoming exonerated, and he was found not guilty. So there might have been some bodies, but it wasn't him.
Yeah,
and
no,
it's still unsolved.
It sounds like, well, we couldn't figure out who did this, so we're just going to blame the guy that survived. Yeah, that's an abortion of justice.
Yeah, I can't believe, 45 years later that because I think it was 2003, 2004, I think is when the trial hit, was those 2 years.
Yeah, pretty crazy.
And it happened in 1960. So, I mean, the dude was, in his 60s or 70s whenever he was put on trial. At that point in time, I'm just being like, fuck it, man. I'm guilty. Put me in prison where I get to have my 3 meals a day and my cable TV and my internet, my library and my gym and my showers. Because I know whenever you send me to the retirement home, I'm not going to get that shit.
This is the Finnish justice system, Geoff. I don't know if they're as nice as we are.
Oh. Yes, they're probably nicer, actually.
Final thoughts on Children of Bodom. Geoff.
Love the fuck out of them, man. It's fun. Just enough to keep you going as far as like the changes are concerned. Like I said before, the only challenge that you have is if you try to cram it all in a very short period of time. But I heard most of the stuff before already, and I had loved the crap out of it, so it didn't bother me too much. But if you haven't checked them out, you're probably not a metal fan, but because you at least know who they are. They're a blast. If you're new to metal and you're just checking out the podcast, they're definitely somebody I would say go take a listen to. They are a lot of fun.
Dan, what about you?
I think the band's rock fucking solid. I mean, you can't really go wrong with any of their releases, minor gripes aside. They always did a good job. They never fucked up. And if you just are looking for a band where you're going to enjoy every release to some degree, you really can't go wrong with Children of Bodom.
If you love riffs, if you love in-sync guitars and keyboards and symphonic metal, you are going to enjoy Children of Bodom. And if you're a classic thrash fan, you're going to love Children of Bodom because they do just enough of everything you like, including the harsh barking vocals, and they never really deviate from that. So listen to Children of Bodom. They're fucking badass. Dan, what's your album of the week?
I gotta say, man, it's a tie between A Sense of Purpose and Battles by actually, it's the album's called The Search, and it's by a rapper, that's right, called NF.
Geoff, what about you?
Since we're on the whole Bodom thing, I'm going to go with another band from the area that's actually my preferred band from that location, and that is the album Hydra by Satariel.
I'll see your Hydra and raise you Driving Through Forever by Crush 40. Compilation of the greatest hits of the band who wrote the Sonic Adventure soundtracks. Take us out, DFT.
Have you ever been listening to this podcast and thought to yourself, I want you guys to talk about this band. You've never talked about them, or in certain cases, you guys have beat around the fucking bush long enough. We don't know what band you're talking about. You got to tell us. I'm really forgetful. There's a lot of ways you can tell us. One of the ways is you can reach out to us on our Facebook page at facebook.com/discography discussion. You can tweet at us at discussmetal. You can send us an email at danandjoeshow@gmail.com. You can join our official group on Facebook, and you can also join our official Discord server. If you click on the link in the show notes, it'll take you to our Discord where you can talk to us directly pretty much anytime you want, as long as we're awake.
And on that note, this has been episode 153 of Discography Discussion. Thank you for listening. You can like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at discussmetal. Subscribe to our podcast everywhere you listen to podcasts, including Google Play, Apple Podcasts, and Stitcher. Visit discussmetal.com for all things discography discussion. And please send questions and comments to danandjoeshow@gmail.com. If you are not a patron, you can become one at patreon.com/discussmetal. We have some sweet perks.
Give me your money or give me your children.
The future's not so bright. The only chance is not to waste your life. Have hope and have no fear. The truth walks by your side.